Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the things that we get for questions in crop is, what about foliar feeding? What do you think of that? Sometimes it pays, sometimes it doesn't. What's going on there? How do I get my best return on investment? We'll discuss foliar feeding, give you some tips on what you can do to make it more effective on your farm.
We'll also discuss irrigation. On the show, we don't talk a lot about irrigation, but there are many little things that we want to take a look at and just talk about some general things that you can consider on your farm if you're irrigating.
Got a tough to control weed of the week. Iron Talk will be coming up a little later, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time, we're going to talk about the farmer's favorite topic of discussion, the weather. And you know, there is one weather condition that we as agronomists especially worry about, and we call it temperature inversions. If you're wondering what that is, we want to explain that today.
Well, you make a joke out of it that farmers' favorite topic is weather. We were talking to one of the foremost climatologists in our country, Elwin Taylor from Iowa State University. He was saying his best students are always the farmers, because all they do all week at home is talk about the weather with their folks. Hey, what's going on with the weather? Is this a good day for spraying, for example? Are the conditions fit? Or may I run into some trouble?
All right, well, here's the thing. Normally, the air is going to be warmer the closer you are to the ground. That's just naturally what happens. Go in a plane sometime, what happens? The temperature's always going down as you go up. With temperature inversions, this usually happens like right away in the morning, for example. You'll see that, hey, we actually have warmer air above that ground level air. Well, that's a temperature inversion, and what can happen is now nothing can move. I don't care if it's spray drift or if it's smoke or anything. It can't get above that level where the temperature is actually warmer. So that causes real problems when you're out spraying something that may have volatilization, like 2,4-D, for example. 2,4-D, you can spray it on a crop, but then the next morning it could actually pick up a little bit. Well, with a temperature inversion, it can't go way up in the air. If it goes way up in the air, it doesn't hurt anything. But if it goes up just a little ways and then it moves laterally and then it could drop down again, that's where we have real problems.
We get a lot of questions about temperature inversions and why some chemical labels say, well, we'd like it to be between 2 or 3 mile an hour winds and 10 mile an hour winds. And people say, well, why don't I want it just dead calm? Well, then there's no wind to blow it out of my field. It'll just drop right here. But it's these inversions that we're really concerned about, because if we have the inversions, again, like Brian said, even though there's not wind, that product could move to the side, and we really don't want to see that.
When we do have wind, it mixes the air better and the inversion goes away. So whenever we have a little bit of wind, we're not nearly as worried about a temperature inversion. Now, if you say, boy, I don't know when these things are happening, how am I supposed to be aware of this? If you just drive down the road almost any morning, especially like in the wintertime, you can see this a lot. Let's say there's an ethanol plant that's just putting out steam. Everybody worries it's smoke. It's just steam. But let's say steam is going up in the air. What happens? It doesn't go straight up in the air. It goes up a little ways and then it goes horizontally. Well, that's a condition where we've got the temperature inversion.
Well, this weather condition, a temperature inversion where we've got warm air and cold air not in the right order. Instead of getting cold going up, there's actually a warm layer trapping a cold layer of air down. That's where we can run into some issues with spraying. If you're out trying to catch our weed of the week, you may have to keep your eyes out for these types of inversions. We'll show you which products may be effective at controlling this weed coming up later in the show.
With new seed traits and chemistries entering the market, your crop protection equipment needs precision and adaptability. Hi-Pro Innovative Spray Technologies has the products to give your applications greater accuracy, less drift, and more coverage. Hi-Pro, right on technology, right on target.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Ever wonder if you are over drying or spoiling your grain when you turn on the fans? Do you worry about the condition of your grain all winter long? Are you able to see what is happening in your bins? AgriDry will give you peace of mind with our 24-hour monitoring system. View real-time grain bin data online from a web-enabled device. AD-Link will send you alerts when sensors are triggered by potential grain problems. Stop worrying and start storing quality grain with AgriDry. Visit agridryllc.com today.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
At Fisher Tradition Farms, we Verus all of our acres, and any new additional acres are automatically Verus. Verus maps allow us to know exactly where our soil types change and how much they change. We use AgriLiquid's Enhance, High Energy N, and Access that allows us to add sulfur. We can customize our AgriLiquid products on a per pound, per acre basis as needed.
Technology is constantly changing the way we farm. Hypro innovative spray technologies are here to keep your farm at the forefront of agricultural innovation. With spray application equipment for any scenario, Hypro is here to put you right on technology, right on target.
One of the most popular questions Darren and I get every year is, should I be foliar feeding my crops? Does it pay?
Well, when we look at foliar feeding, we're talking about applying nutrients over the top of the crop. Some nutrients can penetrate and make it through the leaf tissue. Others have to be absorbed through the root system. Phosphorus would be a great example of one that really needs to go through the root system, whereas some of the micronutrients you may be able to move right in through the leaf tissue. The question is it going to pay or not? And how do I make it pay? One of the best ways that you can determine which foliar feeding programs are going to be best for you is by doing some soil testing before the season. Now you may think, well, wait a second, what's that have to do with foliar feeding later on? It's going to give you a great base to understand, hey, what is out there? What should my plant be picking up? Now you may find later that even though your soil is really high in something like, let's say, zinc, you may run into a zinc deficiency later, and that's fine. You may still foliar feed zinc even though your soil test says that it's really high. But the big thing that I would say is starting with the soil test allows you to try to fix the big problems. Maybe you find out, hey, I have 1 part per million of potassium in my soil. I really need to be getting some potassium out here. I've got virtually none available for my crop. If you don't do that, if you don't put any out on the soil, I find it hard to believe you're going to be able to foliar feed all your needs later in the season. So we want to start by fixing some of the big things. You know, granted, there's going to be exceptions if you have an extremely sandy soil, very sandy, like complete sand and no organic matter. Sure, this is going to be a little different situation. But in normal crop fields, start by fixing things in the soil. Then we're going to do some plant tissue analysis throughout the season to see which nutrients we may need to foliar feed.
Well, the big thing here is foliar fertilizer is typically a lot more expensive than fertilizer I'm going to put on the ground, so that's number one. And number two, when you're in an area that doesn't get a lot of rainfall, like where we're at, we get 20, maybe 24 inches of rain in a whole year, and that includes the snow, so we don't have a lot of rain. Well, they say that the foliar fertilizers are going to work better when your plant has moisture in it. And very often we're running into drought conditions. So for us, we think that it's much better to invest in the soil. Nevertheless, we do have some success using some foliar fertilizer products, but still, the base and what you really want to start with, where you really want to focus 90–95% of your dollars, is with that soil program in most cases.
Well, there's definitely something to, if you've got plentiful moisture, so you haven't been moisture starved, those leaf cuticles are going to be much more open. If you're in a situation where your plant is trying to conserve moisture, it's been really dry, it's been really hot, it's going to be a lot tougher to penetrate through that leaf. So many times in the drier areas of the country, we see better responses on foliar feed products shortly after it's rained. So you get a rain right around a critical growth stage in the crop, and you apply a foliar fertilizer and you can actually get it to go in, where if you don't get that rain, it's tougher to get it in. The other key there that I was talking about is the growth stages. What we see so many producers doing in various crops across the country is they're looking for those key timings. Maybe it's going to be at a key bloom stage in tomatoes or in soybeans, and we'll try and get nutrients out there just ahead of that bloom stage to make sure the plant thinks, hey, I have all the nutrients I need to produce all this seed, so I'm not going to abort any of my flowers. That would be an example of a critical stage. In corn, for example, we want to get all our nutrients out there pretty early because our ear size is going to be determined starting at about V2, V3, up through about V8. Those are critical stages in there. We want to make sure we've got all the nutrients our crop is going to need before it gets to that rapid growth stage after V8.
Well, you can say that, Darren, but when we're talking about foliar nutrients, you can only put a little bit in, and really we want to see hormones, enzymes, everything going with it. You want really a complete type of product to get the best results. But talking about corn, it needs a vast amount of its nitrogen late in the season, after V8. So when you're talking about just some little shot to get the plant going, that's really all foliar fertilizer is. You probably need to do it every week or two if you're running a big foliar fertilizer program. You know, all through the season, you might want to be considering this. But the big thing that I look at is, most of the time, I don't want to spend a lot of my money on the foliar fertilizer program. Yep, if I got specific issues and I've found products that work for me at the right stage, do a lot of experimenting first before you start investing lots of money on your farm. That's our number one piece of advice. Spend most of your money on fixing soil issues. Let's get those things handled first.
So is foliar feeding going to be the thing that takes you from 200 bushel corn to 300 bushel corn? I doubt it, but it is something that can definitely help if you've got a stressful time and you're trying to bring your crop through that, or if you're short in just 1 or 2 nutrients and want to get a little bit more of them out there.
Well, another key to getting great yields is having great weed control. We'll talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
The experience from the salesman to the building crew all the way through was just pleasant and professional.
I feel that the people at Morton are my friends. I'll do anything for them because I felt they met that with me.
I wouldn't have anybody build me a building other than Morton. I wouldn't even consider anybody else.
It pays to go look around, but by far Morton's got the best building and we're just so pleased with it.
Contact Morton Buildings today during our Building Value Days sales event. Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
When you need one machine that can do it all, you send in a Spartan, your all-in-one forage solution from Capello, USA. This direct cutting system is the right machine for almost any forage crop and gets everything done in a single pass. Keeps your costs down. Always versatile. The Spartan can be configured to fit any self-propelled forage harvester in the world. So, no matter what you forage, send in a Spartan from Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Today we want to talk a little about irrigation. So regardless of the type of irrigation you have, whether it's pivot or flood irrigation, there are just a few things that we really want to look for.
Okay, first of all, when we're looking at irrigating, monitoring the moisture levels in your soil is a great way to determine, hey, what's my return on investment going to be? Now, if you're in a dry area of the country, it's 100 degrees, you can't afford for that pivot to stop. You can't afford for the irrigation to stop. Even if you're in good shape today, wow, it's going to be 100 degrees, it's windy, it's sunny, my crop is pulling moisture out of the ground, you pretty much have to keep rolling on lighter soils. Now, obviously, if you've got heavier soils, it's a lot more forgiving for you.
Well, the most important thing that I wanted to focus on is, what's my water quality? Make sure that you know what your water quality is, because we've seen it so many times over the years where we've got poor water quality, and after 20, 30, 40 years of irrigating, pretty soon we kill the soil. We get too much salt out there or something like that. We've got to have good water. So make sure that you're working with someone who can help you with that. If you've got really high pH water, you got a lot of salt, you got different issues, then you want to take a look at addressing those types of things.
It could be drilling a deeper well, maybe the water source, you just need to go deeper to get to some good water. It could be treating that water. Maybe you realize, hey, you know what? It's just a little hard, it's a little high in iron. We could potentially treat that water, take that excess iron away, and now we won't have those issues out in our field. However, if it's really a bad situation where you're pumping all kinds of salt out, it's tough to fix that. One thing that can definitely help you with that is to have some drain tile underneath. And it seems weird to say, what, I'm adding water, I'm short of water, that's my problem. But if your water is poor quality, you need to flush some of those leachable things like salts away. So maybe you're in a situation where you've got excess salt, that's fine. You've got a lighter soil, you might be able to flush that salt down through. Now, you're not going to be nearly as efficient as the farmer who could just put on just barely enough water and get by. You may have to put a little extra on, but you certainly want to monitor those levels and see how you can address them to avoid problems in your field.
Most of the time the salt issue isn't because of poor water quality, it's simply because we get too much water on a certain area of the field and that water can't get away. So you can add tile, and that's a great way to go, and we suggest that to almost anyone who irrigates. But the other side of it is, with modern technology now, and especially if you have different zones set up in your field, you can put on the right amount of water in different areas of the field. We see this with some of the new technology with pivots, for example. So as you're crossing that field, there are some areas where the soil is heavier and the drainage is worse. We don't need as much water right there. And if you have monitoring sensors out there, you can do a real good job fine-tuning this. It's changed a lot in the last 20 years. And so if you're looking at either upgrading your old system or getting a new system, this is definitely something we strongly advise you consider.
The other thing is just, when do you water and when do you not water? Depending on where you're at in the country, this is going to vary, and so you're going to want to work with an agronomist who's got a good feel for this, or talk to other farmers in the area who are successful and find out, okay, what is the strategy? When do I get started? Now, with above ground irrigation, it's pretty easy just to watch what the neighbors are doing and make note of that and say, oh, he never turns his pivot on until this point. But it's one of those things that it takes a little common sense to. Let's take soybeans, for example. With indeterminate soybean varieties that they're going to start flowering after the day length gets shorter, we really advise looking at that watering and holding off as long as you can until after that plant is in the reproductive phase. If we put water on really early, a lot of times we get this great big plant that's drawing lots of water to keep all this foliage alive that may or may not make a whole lot of seed. We've all seen those soybean fields that are chest high that only yield 35 or 40 bushels, and we're tremendously disappointed.
So specifically, like in our region of the country, we would not start irrigating typically until the very end of July. And I know that seems really late, and sometimes the beans are going to look horrible, but you want to give them a little bit of stress until you get to that point in the year. Yes, with corn, you got to do it earlier. And a lot of these things you're going to have to figure out trial and error yourself. But all I'm trying to say here is, go really late with the soybeans. That's when they need their moisture. couple other things we wanted to say. Make sure whatever system you're using, you're monitoring it, you're checking on it, you're servicing it, all that kind of thing. You've got a lot of dollars that are invested there. And then also people are talking about these sprinklers that, hey, maybe we can use a little bit less water, we have less evaporation, we're going to irrigate at certain times of the day, things like that. All of those things come into play now, especially as we have lots of water shortages around the country.
There are a lot of different ways you can irrigate. You can certainly do it subsurface through drainage tile or through drip tape irrigation. You can obviously do it over the top too. We're gonna have all three of those methods on display at the Ag PhD Field Day this summer, Thursday, July 28th on our farm. We'll show how corn is responding to each of these and also some soybeans throughout the demonstration, so you can see what the differences are with different types of irrigation. There's certainly some efficiencies going below ground, but there's some nice things you can do over the top, including throwing in your foliar feed or throwing in fungicides.
Well, one of the bad things with irrigation, unfortunately, is you're also going to irrigate your weeds. If you want to control this weed, stay tuned. It's coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our Weed of the Week is absinthe wormwood.
When we think about tough perennial weeds, this is one of them, but look at where we see absinthe wormwood. Now, some people say, oh, it's just in the roadside or it's out in the pasture a little bit. Okay, well, it's not in every pasture. Why is it in the pasture that it's in? Many times we're looking at a situation where we've overgrazed or where we've got an extreme drought and we aren't getting good grass growth. A couple things that you can do here. The first one is fertility. You've got to manage fertility out in pasture areas and do it right, because if you get good thick growth, you're going to choke out weeds like absinthe wormwood. The other thing is just grazing management. Rotational grazing is so key to stopping weeds and also improving grass production and the health of your pasture long term.
All right, let's say you've got this weed out there. How are you going to stop it? Now, certainly dicamba and 2,4-D have some activity. Milestone is pretty decent. My favorite's going to be Tordon. You'll find other products out there like Chaparral that'll have some activity and stuff too. But let's go back to this Tordon. A lot of people for many years said, you know what, I can only afford to spray 2,4-D out there. Well, do you know how much a quart of LV6 costs today? It's almost $7, which is about the same as a pint of Tordon. Well, a pint of Tordon versus a quart of LV6, there's no comparison when it comes to absinthe wormwood. You've got much better control out of that Tordon and you have much longer residual. The only downside to that residual is you better make sure it's going to be a grass for many years, because you can't go in and plant a broadleaf crop for a really long time. We usually will say, hey, if we are spraying a quart or even a pint of Tordon, you're going to have to wait a decade or more before you take that pasture out and turn it into raising a broadleaf crop like soybeans.
Absinthe wormwood is rarely a problem in crop, but if it is, get out there with a burn down ahead of time. It's a perennial weed. It's going to be up early. It's also going to be up in the fall, so you can do fall treatments as well. That works great, especially around a broadleaf crop like soybeans, for example. Do a fall treatment. You can use dicamba in front of corn. You could use 2,4-D in front of soybeans, especially if you're doing them in the fall where you can use high rates.
Yeah, just don't use Tordon out in your crop fields and you probably won't have too many issues. Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Apply Gypsoil on your farm to add cost-effective sulfur to soils and improve soil structure. Gypsoil increases calcium and helps flush excess magnesium in tight soils, improve air and water infiltration, and reduce problem wet spots and crusting. Better soil quality means better water quality, so Gypsoil is good for the environment too. For more information about putting Gypsoil to work on your farm, call 866-GYPSOIL or 497-7645. Visit online at gypsoil.com.
We have a school and a church nearby.
I actually go to the classroom to educate the students about what's going on here on my farm. The system that I have, I tie everything together. No-till, cover crops. We applied AgriLiquid in-furrow with our soybeans this year. It seemed like they jumped out of the soil even though we had the record rainfall. I really feel that I'm feeding my plant on a consistent year-round basis throughout the growing season.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon-D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Having the right equipment is critical to achieving the best performance from your fungicide applications. In today's Iron Talk, I'll show you a small change that could make a big difference for you. With fungicides, you have to understand how they work in order to set up your sprayer to optimize their performance. There are two transport systems in the plant called the xylem and the phloem. The xylem can only move things upward in the plant. The phloem moves things like nutrients and water both up and down in the plant. Fungicides, once they're inside the plant, only move in the xylem. One other important consideration is that fungicides can only protect the leaves and plant parts that are out at the time of application. With this in mind, there are some little changes that you need to make on your sprayer compared to if you're spraying Roundup. First of all, with fungicides, you should use more spray volume with ground rigs performing mid-season applications. Your crop is up, it has some size to it now. You need the volume to penetrate the crop canopy and cover these plants. Secondly, you need the correct spray tips to make medium-sized droplets to get the best coverage. The big coarse droplets you try to use with dicamba, 2,4-D, or Roundup are not nearly as effective when trying to apply fungicides. Flat fans work well for this droplet size, and many farmers are seeing even better results with twin fan nozzles, especially when you're trying to protect vertical plant parts like wheat heads, for example. Finally, your spray pressure should be fairly high to get penetration down through the crop canopy and to coat the plants. That's tough to do if you're running too fast with the ground rig, so slow down a little and do the job right. Spraying a fungicide is a lot different than spraying straight Roundup. Smaller droplet size, higher pressure, and higher water volumes help to achieve excellent coverage to get the job done right. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomy information, we invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show on SiriusXM Channel 147 each weekday at 2 p.m. Central.
Don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Did you realize that a healthy soil only contains about 50% dirt? In order for the soil microbes and plants to work together properly, soil should contain 25% air and 25% water. Today's farming practices are designed around maintaining that healthy balance. To learn more, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.